Well, first of all, it is a program with, on one hand, sonatas, and on the other hand, variations of very different kinds, preceded by, so to say, like an improvisation, the Mozart Fantasia in C minor. It is a program, well, maybe not a path, but it's a program about, you could maybe say, crucial points in the composer's developments. The two Haydn pieces are quite clearly something new and different from most of his earlier works. So you could say they represent in certain ways the final stage of his aesthetic as a composer. Same could be said about the Mozart. Fantasy. There are lots of fantasies by Mozart, some fragments of fantasies, and this is somehow his final statement about what a fantasy could or maybe should be like. And one could, I mean, it's always a problem talking about music because one should listen to music rather than talk about it. There is, in a way, something new that one could maybe say that Beethoven emphasizes the aspect of that music develops in time. Now this sounds very stupid. Music can only develop in time, but in many cases it has been described as also having an analogy to architecture. Like a building, there is something in the beginning and in the end, and in the middle it's something different. So whatever symmetry of musical form. But of course, in architectural form, you can see immediately everything. If you stand in front of a building, you see all the formal aspects. Maybe not all the details, but you see what it looks like. In the musical, if you listen to an architecture in music, in the beginning you have no idea what's going to be. And what Beethoven does in these works is actually questioning exactly our expectations and sometimes fulfilling them and sometimes also not fulfilling them or reinterpreting them. So in the famous first movement of the Tempest Sonata, it starts with these slow chords, which sound like an introduction. And if we then listen, and it develops into something, and once we think, now we are there. Now this must be the first theme, the first real statement. Actually, we very soon discover we are already no longer in the main tonality, and it's actually what we thought was the first theme was actually already a transition towards something else, and what we thought was an introduction was actually the theme itself. So putting it into words, it sounds all very sophisticated, but it is actually, it is sophisticated because Beethoven was always a sophisticated composer, but it makes us question the process of listening and what we know already. And of course, like if I talk and if I begin a sentence, you have certain expectations, but I might surprise you, or I might not surprise you. So it's a bit the analogy, not so much with architecture, but with speech, which is also something you develop your thoughts in time, and you can maybe contradict yourself or take a turn like a joke. Suddenly you start laughing because there is a moment, this is the punchline. So it is a very fascinating thing, and it is obviously also a quality which certain late works of Haydn have also, the play of creating expectations and maybe not fulfilling them, but going elsewhere. So if there is a path in the program, it would be something like this. And also the variations are taking part in this. The Haydn variations are quite special in that it's actually, there's the main theme in F minor, and then there is like a couplet in F major, and the variations vary both parts, so it's a double variation. The process of variation gets more manifold, so to say. And in the Beethoven variations, there's also something which opens it. The normal case of a variation cycle is that you have the melody in the beginning on which the variations are composed, and they basically stay harmonically on that same tonality. Sometimes major turns into minor, or the other way around. In the F major variations, Opus 34, Beethoven opens it up by writing every variation in a completely different key. So he does a certain modulation which actually comes rather from a sonata idea, where you have tonalities opposing or commenting each other. And he introduces that idea in the variation cycle in order to finally, because of all the excursions he did, when he comes back, there is a greater sense of unity and really of coming back home after having left F major for quite a long time. Finally, of course, the last variation, the finale, is again in the main tonality of F major. So path or not path, but I think it's always interesting. Maybe I would rather say it's a program where the pieces comment on each other, even though they might not even be by the same composer. And that was one of the ideas behind it. Another is just that very spontaneously, I like them all very much.